I really appreciate being invited to speak on this topic because I feel this is a really, really important topic, and I don't know if I can really do it the justice it needs in an hour. But we'll have a go. We'll get to kind of the gist of it. So the topic is called emotional detox, and um, why would we want to look at this? Because um, if we don't really sort out our kind of emotional coding that we've got, that it ultimately ends up holding us back. It even holds us back from spirituality, actually, and it holds us back from life. It holds us back from being, being who we really could be. That it's like the potential that we could be. It can be quite blocked by these different emotions, and so it is really kind of worth taking time to understand this. And I guess there's a prerequisite to this, and that is that if you just work on your emotions and you're not really working on anything else, you could end up in a soup, if you know what I mean. And so working on emotions and working on spirituality is a kind of beautiful marriage, because we really need to see what that potential in us is. And when we're studying spirituality, and here we study in the form of Raj Yoga meditation, a very beautiful nugget of Raj Yoga meditation or Raj Yoga is that each one of us is intrinsically good, beautiful, lovely, gorgeous, but often we're blocked from seeing ourselves, and because of things that have happened on the journey. And so really to explore the beauty of the self along with the blocks kind of makes it a very incredible journey. If we're not doing the other work, probably we won't even see the blocks anyway. So what happens on the spiritual journey, which obviously you're all on because you've joined this, whether it's you're new or whatever, something in you is wanting to go on this kind of journey of self-exploration. And what first we have to kind of have an understanding of the truth about the self. So the more that we have an understanding and experience of the truth about ourselves, doesn't mean that all the emotions will suddenly drop off and go away. No, it's only actually when you start this process of going deeper into the truth about the self, will you start to, in a way, see the layers of emotions that you're carrying. And what is brilliant about life and hugely challenging about life, so it's brilliant and hugely challenging at the same time, is that often there'll be certain people in your life who will trigger those layers, and it will be very uncomfortable to be around them. You may want to run away from them, you may want to avoid them, you may want to, you might even put them down. There's certain behaviors that may come into play when your wounds get hit. And, and if someone is consistently doing that, it can be very uncomfortable. But actually, if we could turn that on its head, that actually you do need those people in your life who push your buttons. I know it's uncomfortable. None of us want to do it. But actually they're in a way they do become your best friends, because they're showing you the layers that are blocking you from expressing the huge potential that is in. We could call it a soul potential, like an intrinsic potential, but that could be quite buried under this. So here comes this person with a with a kind of a certain behavior that pokes at you, and it's uncomfortable. And all of us are carrying some kind of emotional code, and that's a kind of dysfunctional code that we maybe picked up from childhood, teenage years, maybe even before. Sometimes it can be something that even happened when you were in the womb, or something that was going on in your mother or your father, because there's a lot that that when we're in the womb, we pick up, depending on your belief system. You may think about that there was maybe more than this birth that we're carrying as well. And then in this birth, it sort of gets triggered for us to kind of heal that wound. And so I see this as important work. Not everyone is doing this work. Some people avoid this work because it can be quite intense in some ways. But somehow I have chosen to do it, and therefore have got some experience of it, and that's what I'd like to share with you. And so I thought I'd take the word detox and make it an acronym, because then it's very easy to remember. And actually, at the end of this, I've got a little model that will hopefully bring it together, and so we can see it's like a PowerPoint model, and we'll be able to see, you know, what I'm talking about in a kind of picture form, because some of us are much more visual learners, and therefore it's easier if we kind of see it as a kind of model or a picture. So here we go. Let's see. So my D for the detox, if we're going to make it an acronym, my D would be detach. Now, this is a kind of interesting word because often it's so misunderstood, and it means people see it as moving away from, people can see it as a cold thing. But what I'm talking about here is a detachment that goes with a lot of clarity, or you're trying to find the clarity. You know, when something comes and it triggers a kind of a emotion in you, or a feeling in you that's not positive, you know, this is what we're detaching from. And of course, you know, it gets subtler and subtler and subtler on the journey. So, you know, the more actually I'm getting an experience of the truth, and what I would say about the truth is that at our core, all of us are good. There's a kind of like a deep peace. There's a self-respect, like a love for the self, and a joy. And it's all there, but it can be quite blocked under these layers. And of course, we're going to get glimpses of it. Life would be too hard if we didn't, but, you know, we might not be expressing the full potential of that. And so, you know, here may be someone in your life. It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be you could have married them, you could have given birth to them. You know, it could be a colleague at work, you know, a friend that does it, or, you know, that someone in your, or someone that you live with, you might have not chosen to live with them, but somehow you ended up living with them. And they sort of, in a way, come, I would say, as messengers to help you decode the code that you're carrying. And so it's almost like their behavior or their presence, their presence can be enough. Their presence, their behavior, something they say, something they do, triggers something in you. And it can be an uncomfortable feeling. And you really usually know when it's quite a big trigger, because you'll want to go away from them, you'll want to avoid them. You might dislike them because of what they're triggering in you. All sorts of things could come up. So when I'm talking about detachment, what I'm talking about is detaching, internally detaching, knowing the detachment is knowing that they may be the trigger, but they're not the cause. And this is a big, deep thing to understand. And often we know the theory, but to do it in that moment, they are the trigger. So they've hit the wound, but they are not the cause. They're not the cause of your wound. But of course, you may have to be around them quite a lot because of your job, or you married them. And so it can be quite a painful thing if you're keep being triggered and you don't have a kind of method to release the emotion. And so detaching is kind of knowing that it's actually nothing about them. And in a way, what you're doing is you're packing up your thinking about them, and you're starting to see that this is something about me. And this is probably a really courageous step, and often we don't do it. Often we project onto that person and make them responsible for what we are feeling. And sometimes the illusion is really powerful, because here you were feeling kind of calm and nice and thing, and suddenly that person comes in and has a certain behavior and or says a certain thing, and it kind of hits the wound in you. And so it appears that they're the problem, because before they came on the scene you were feeling quite sort of okay, and suddenly you're not feeling okay. And so it must be about them, because you know before I was fine, they came along, I'm not fine now. So the illusion looks like it's about them, but the reality is it's not about them. But they've just become the trigger at that moment in time to hit a kind of wound that's inside of you that needs to be healed and can be healed. And why detachment is so important is because if we don't have this art of coming back inside, detaching from the trigger, then we get consumed by the trigger. So our mind will start thinking, why did they say that? Or when are they going to leave? Or be all the kind of how questions. Where's this going to go? How am I going to cope with them if they're going to stay around? So there's a kind of questioning in the mind. The mind goes into a spin, and it projects onto the trigger, and it makes the trigger the issue. And then we're consumed by that issue, that person. And this could go on for many years, actually, if we don't really understand what's going on. And every time we may be in that person's company, we could get triggered again. So it's really worth the journey of really understanding that they are the trigger, but they're not the cause. And as we start to do this in a work of releasing what's blocked in us, there'll be a point when that same person comes may have the same behavior, and you won't be triggered, and you would have healed that wound, and you will actually feel very light around them. You'll feel quite a lot of joy around them, and there'll be a kind of appreciation actually that they really helped you on your journey. And I'm seeing this with a couple of souls, I could say, that that I lived with them, several years ago, and there was challenges at the time, because I think for both of us we were kind of hitting these kind of wounds. And although most of the time we all managed it because we have a spiritual practice, but there were times when you just had to kind of go away and do your inner way, and you sort of wished you weren't living with them. But now those same souls, I feel a lot of love for them, because I really understand now something that I didn't really understand at the time, is that they were sent to help me, but I couldn't understand it. I didn't have enough spiritual muscle at that time, or enough spiritual understanding to really see what was going on. But now I feel, it's almost like we wave to each other, or there's real kind of like some kind of deep acknowledgement of that we went through something. And I don't know if it needs to be spoken. Maybe there'll be a point where, we do speak about it and realize, you really hit my ego, and thank you, but and thank you for helping me work on it. And I think all of us will have someone probably at the current time who you get lulls in your life. You get lulls in your life where you're moving along fine, and sometimes we do need those lulls. Otherwise, it's a bit intense, isn't it? But there may be someone in your life at the current time that is doing this to you. So if you could turn it around in your mind that they're not the problem, that they're actually the helper, then you start moving faster. Otherwise, you can get very stuck. And then, lots can happen. So, so they bring up this emotion. So basically you're detaching your thinking, from them. That's what you're detaching. You're not moving away from them. I mean, if you can manage it, sometimes you can't, you have to get out. But really the real detachment is that you're moving your thoughts away from them and you're moving your thoughts back towards yourself. That's the real detachment. It's the spiritual path is not moving away from people. That's more like a religious, they used to do it in the old days, go live in the caves away from people. This is not what Raj Yoga is about. It's much more courageous to be there and face it and go through it. And I guess then my E would be that there has to, as I mentioned before, there has to be some kind of empowerment going on. So I've realized myself lately that we can, for quite a long time, be involved in what I call drama improvement, life improvement. So I might spend some time trying to improve Margaret's personality or improve the house or get a new sofa or all this kind of stuff where we're trying to improve what's around us and trying to improve ourselves. That there's a whole kind of self-help industry out there, which is about kind of improvement. And actually, and I used to even call myself professionally a personal development trainer, and I don't call myself that anymore. I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, there's something not right here. So I change it to empowered living consultant. And it sounds kind of grand. And I have had a few bookings with the name. So obviously people like it, but it's more about this. It's more about, empowerment. And, in the study of Raj Yoga, we start to see ourselves as these beautiful beings that inhabit a body. And empowerment is when you start to really contemplate that this beautiful being is the true you, and you are not your roles, you're not even your personality. There's part of you behind this that is really a peaceful being, a loving being, a joyful being. And what meditation does is it gives us an opportunity, a chance to kind of sit with the truth about ourselves and empower that. And as we do, we will start to have much more clarity about some of these layers. So it doesn't mean necessarily they're all going to go away, but it will be that we'll maybe start to handle them differently. When things come up, when things get triggered, we will start to maybe have more peace to handle them, or more self-care, more love within ourselves to handle them. We'll be more respectful of the person who triggers our buttons, because we now understand that they're a helper in our process. And I've noticed that every time a kind of layer gets released, there's more joy that emerges. So that would be my E. So it's about soul empowerment. This is the this is the kind of business of Raj Yoga, is about soul empowerment. We can call it being, soul, spirit. Spirit has like some other kind of connotations. So soul empowerment is really where we're at. We're not into self-improvement. And I hope you can see the difference. And if you can't, then you can ask a question in the chat about that, and I can maybe go into more detail. So so far we've done D, which is detach from the trigger, detach from the thoughts about the trigger, because it's not about the trigger. And it's really about empowerment. We're working on empowering ourselves. But if you haven't done the work of empowering yourself, you're not going to be able to do it at the moment of the trigger. That work has to be ongoing. It's lifelong work, understanding ourselves and moving into the truth about it. It's lifelong. It's like a daily exploration. You know, it's more than a practice, it's a daily exploration of taking time to kind of be with myself, with the truth about myself, and grow that truth. And so my T would be trust. And this is a really big one, to trust. Trust that the whatever scene that you find yourself in is helping you evolve, spiritually evolve, to understand that the situations are coming to help you heal, to help you become whole again. Because when we're in that awareness of the self as that spiritual being, and we are actually experiencing that peace about the self, that love that comes from inside out, and that joy that comes from inside out. And these experiences are not dependent on life. You know, we've learned to expect life to give us these. You know, we want life to make us happy. We want people to give us love. We want, you know, we want the quiet time to make us feel peaceful. So we've got a huge expectation that these things come from life, and a huge expectation that life will give them to us. That's not the purpose of life, actually. These things are already within inside ourselves, but they're just blocked, often blocked. And so meditation gives us a, you know, grand opportunity to kind of just sit with the truth about the self and not expect them from life. And as we start to nurture these beautiful feelings that are within us, then we start to give them to life. And this is the purpose of life, is for you to express your beautiful core qualities through whatever you do, through whatever role you play, through every interaction. This is the highest aim, and this is what the purpose of life. You know, it's not, the purpose of life is not to accumulate things. The purpose of life is not to climb up the career ladder. It's not the purpose. But yeah, if you're experiencing the beauty within yourself and you climb up the career ladder, fantastic. But that climbing the career ladder is not the purpose. So the purpose of life is to express your best, and in order to do that, you need time with yourself to really, you know, explore and discover what is your best, what is that pure potential, and then how you might express that. And that becomes creativity. That is the beauty of life, is, you know, the wonder of how you express yourself, you know, how you show up in life. That becomes the beauty. So my O would be to be open to the spiritual dimension. And what I mean by that is to first have that connection with yourself as that being that's got these beautiful qualities. And, you know, I think it's not that difficult to maybe to go on to things like love yourself and stuff like that. And that sometimes has more challenges. But just sometimes when we sit quietly and we let all the thoughts about life just kind of calm down, and we move into that place of acceptance of life as it is, and all the thoughts kind of stop, and we just bring that attention to ourselves, then there's a kind of natural peace that sits behind that thinking mind. It's always there, it will always be there. But often we're not experiencing that natural peace because our thinking is always about that person or that thing we've got to do, or that project we've got to finish. And our thinking process is very externalized, and therefore we don't give ourselves a chance to experience our own peace. And life can keep you busy all the time, and you don't have time to sit back. So, you know, I guess this is part of the love of the self, is that you want to experience the beauty of yourself. You want to enjoy yourself. You want to enjoy yourself alone, not just with other people. So open up to this spiritual dimension. And I would say for me, that has included a link to, or a connection with, a relationship with the divine. You can call it the divine or the supreme. And again, a being, you can say supreme being. And what is useful and amazing about making this connection is that this being is always peaceful and always in that state of love, is always expressing love and is always expressing joy, or we can even call it like a blissfulness. And therefore, when we connect with a being that is always in that state, it empowers our state. So it is a huge part of this soul empowerment. You know, first we have to connect with ourselves, because if we don't connect with ourselves, we're not on that kind of frequency to connect with the supreme. But once we connect with ourselves, it's like we can take that next step. And you know, what we can learn to do it. If you haven't ever done it, you can learn to do it. And we'll have a meditation at the end where we'll see if we can get a sense of it. But there's courses that are run by the Brahma Kumaris to help you make that connection and empower yourself. So it's, you know, all there available for you. And what happens is that is also part of the process of healing these wounds, because as our peace gets restored, as our self-love gets restored, you know, it's almost like learning to love yourself as that spiritual being, and that starts to heal the gaps that maybe you didn't get from some of the people that you wanted to get it from in life. You know, so and also to connect with a being who's always loving, not just to me, but to everyone, has pure love for every being, that somehow that love starts to fill the gaps, And I would say that's very integral to the healing process and my healing process. So when something gets triggered and you have enough clarity and maybe spiritual muscle to detach, and say, this is not about the trigger, this is about something in me that needs healing, then this can be brought into that relationship that you're creating with this being who's full of all these beautiful qualities. And it's almost like that relationship starts to kind of help you release those feelings, kind of melts them in some way, or kind of helps you hold until they're released, something like that. Different times, different things. And then what happens is that we start to express from our truth, you know, as one layer gets removed, as the different layers get removed, then you become much more authentic, expressing your truth. And this in itself brings joy, you know, and it is a beautiful moment that when you're around the one who used to trigger, and it's no longer happening, because you're empowered and you feel amazing. But sometimes there's a bit of a journey there. They may have to keep, the wound may be big, the wound you're carrying may be big, and therefore they keep prodding at it until you start paying attention to it and start, you know, being prepared to work with it. And you know, it's almost like what we're aiming for here is to stop these emotional code patterns that maybe we've been carrying for a long time, heal them. And it's almost like a new birth. It's like a new you that can kind of emerge, that's much kind of lighter and easier and happier, more fulfilled. It's really like once these are cleared out, it's really like a beauty. And about 10 years ago, you know, I went through this. 2 people turned up in my life, One from, you know, I hadn't seen for 30 years, one that I hadn't seen for 20 years, and it happened within a space of about 6 months. So I was trying to cope with the first one, and then the second one came, and it was like, it was kind of a big upheaval for me, like a whole identity crisis, a whole middle-age crisis, identity crisis. It probably all happened at the same time. And yeah, I had enough spiritual muscle and connection with the Supreme Being to start working through this and not blaming them for triggering all these emotions that I had suppressed. So so I got quite a lot of experience at that time of this process, and that allows me to kind of have a clarity to be able to share it with you. Because if I hadn't gone through it myself and see how it works, it's not so easy to describe it. But I could see as I went past through the layers, more and more joy was being expressed, and people started to notice that I was looking lighter. They said, "Gosh, you're even your body's different, your face looks different," you know. So you're less stiff in your body, because, you know, holding these emotions, even though we're holding them kind of here, has a big effect on our body. And as that starts to release, you may find that even aches and pains go. You know. So so I took a bit of a spiritual license with the X, and I put express. So express yourself, you know, to, you know, this is the aim of life, to express your full potential. And however that lands in life will be different for each of us. It may be through a certain role, it may be in a, you know, in a writing or something, you know, it will something. It's like we will give something to the planet, to humanity, and it might only be an energetic thing, but it's still worthy. And as we do this in the work, where we release these held emotions and we move more into the truth and we start to express that, then in a way we, without even knowing, we give permission for others to do it. So it's deep work, and but it's really worth it. That's what I can say. It's really worth the journey, because otherwise you suffer. Basically, you know, the wounds aren't going to go away, and you'll just suffer and suffer and suffer. And when you start to release them with the help of the Supreme Being, it really is amazing. You know, and some of them can shift, even things that you've held for quite a long time, they can shift quite quickly, you know, if you're kind of courageous to do the work. So I have a little model. I'm not sure if I'm am I co-host? If not, maybe in a space.
Yes, you are, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to show a model, and hopefully this helps sum it up for you. So, and then I'm very open to take questions. So let me just get this onto the slide. Okay, so emotional detox. And I really like this image, because there's a kind of, if you can see, there's a kind of like a center point for this image, and in a way, you know, how do you put into a picture the beingness of us? And often we use a point of light, but that doesn't always work for everyone. It's like a subtle, because we're talking about something that's not physical. So I like this image because there obviously is a subtle, there's a kind of center point in a way for this, but from that center point, there's all kind of whirling emotions, and maybe we can see the blue ones as the kind of more positive, and the brown ones as all that stuff that comes up that needs to be detoxed. And we can know, even in one day, we can move through a variety of, you know, brilliant feelings, fantastic. Someone comes in that really makes us laugh, and then later in the day we can get triggered. You know, it's like that. Oh, that's been my experience. So there's this model that I put together after I went through this whole thing many years ago, and it is sort of behind me now, and I really can see these souls that help me on my journey, these beings, these souls who help me understand. I really have a lot of love for them. It's a very, very spiritual love. And one of them I don't see anymore, but on a kind of on a mind level, I'm every so often I really send them good wishes and pure feelings for their life. But it doesn't feel necessary for me to be in touch with them. And the other one I am in touch with because it's a relative, and our relationship is actually very beautiful. It's not demanding at all, and we may not see each other or speak to each other for, well, because of COVID, we haven't seen each other for quite a long time now, but speaking, we may go months, not really connecting, but when we do, there's a kind of magic almost. That's what I can say, but I think that's because I was prepared to do that inner work, like a decade ago. So, again, how do we describe this being? So I've done this point of light, that's kind of got a sparkle, and this is like the true self, the beautiful self. And, we have within us, within that kind of spark of us, we have these beautiful qualities of peace, love, and joy. And I would say also like a purity and a wisdom and a blissfulness. And also inside there's silence, and so it's all there to be explored. And part of Raj Yoga meditation, very clearly, it's about making this connection with the supreme source. And we could see a very similar image to the one I put for the self, except on the energy, obviously the energy field is going to be massive because it's always in that state. And of course, the aim is to create a relationship, but to receive empowerment of our truth. And that happens because that being is always in peace, love, and joy. So it's an empowering thing. So, we could call this is the main aim of Raj Yoga meditation, is to kind of almost be in this cocoon, take time to be in this cocoon, and that's the process that goes on, And then, but then there's life, and life has all its challenges, and of course the other bit is that when we are in this cocoon, we start to feel very secure. We because we're in our truth, we're connected to the one whose truth, we feel secure, and that security allows us to do the work with the part of ourselves that can be very insecure. And then there's life, and of course, if we can respond to life calmly or kindly or with humor, all works well. But we also know that there's these triggers that come, and these triggers hit the bit of us that's sad, that life didn't go the way that I thought it would. So it's left a kind of sadness, or that person that I wanted to be around me is no longer around me, and also it can hit when I say bad, no one's bad, but we can have this feeling that we're bad or we're not good enough. It's like a low self-esteem, or and then on top of that there can be a mad, but the anger, but the anger usually comes from one of the other two. But often we're dealing with an anger, and most times you'll see that if you allow your anger to go down, if you can not project it, and if you can hold it enough that it goes down, then you'll usually see that underneath that there's a kind of low self-esteem belief system, or a kind of sadness. But often we don't get to see that because we just stay kind of angry with the trigger. And of course, what happens when the trigger hits this, we've become quite used to the mind going into a spin. The mind goes into a coping mechanism, and it starts asking questions about the trigger. Why did they say that? what's the point of that person being around me? When are they going to leave? Who do they think they are for talking to me like that? Where's this going to go? Where can I hide, or where can I escape to, or it can be lots of things. And how am I going to cope usually? Because that's the fear that this trigger is going to overwhelm us. And how am I going to cope with this? How am I going to cope if they continually press these buttons? So so what happens is the mind goes into the spin, and we get completely consumed by the trigger. And we've all done this. It's not that only you've done this. We've all done this, where we get consumed by the trigger, and our thinking processes around that person. Normally situations we get over pretty quick. Like you might be grumpy because it's Friday night and it's raining and you get a puncture, but you normally pass through those things. You may be grumpy and sad that you didn't get to the event that you wanted to get to, and all that. There may be, but usually that passes relatively quickly. But when it's about another being and they're pushing about that's much more deeper work, because they're hitting something much deeper in you. And so we call this projection. The mind is projecting onto this person or this thing, and therefore what happens is we actually miss an opportunity to heal, because now we're blaming this trigger for what we're feeling, which is not true. It's not true. They triggered it, but they're not to blame. And they actually came to give us an opportunity, and we're kind of missing the point. But it's not easy, because it looked like it was about them, because I was feeling fine before they came and triggered my button. And then the other thing that we do, we numb our feelings, and we're all expert at this, and we all have our unique way of numbing. And that might be through food, and that's why they call it comfort eating. Food, or drink. Okay, it's not too bad if it's a cup of tea, or but water, better to go for water. But it can be a coffee addiction that we get into, or it could be alcohol addiction. And you can see that all the addictions really come from the numbing of feelings. It's just a way to numb, and then we've numbed so much that it becomes an addiction. So anyone who comes out any addictive behavior, you really got to salute them, because they've also had to work on the sad, bad and mad. And this is what the 12 steps is about, really. And then, of course, it can be that we escape in films and all sorts of things, that we all have our own method, just sit in front of the TV and being a passive person, and that helps us numb what happened at work. Sleep, I think we've all done this of I've had enough of today, I'm going to bed, or we go for a nap or something. And it does help sometimes, because at least during that time, you kind of detach from it. All these things, they help for a little while, but they'll not solve the problem. It's like while you're eating that lovely cake, because of the sensual pleasure of it, that other thing goes to the back of your mind, but it hasn't gone away. That's the thing, it hasn't gone away. And shopping, I think, most of us, we've all done it, haven't we, where we, not feeling good, and then we go buy something, and for a little while we feel good, but it doesn't last long. And of course we call this suppression. And of course it could be other things here, gambling, social media is a big one now. You go on social media, but often it makes it worse, because you didn't get the likes, and then it kind of can spiral. Why didn't they give me the likes? You know what I mean? It get caught in the thing. So this is what we call suppression. So we've all become pretty expert at projection and suppression in our own ways. And yet that doesn't heal the wound. And in fact, because it's not true, projection's not true, then actually it leaves us feeling, in a way, more insecure. It doesn't make us feel secure. It's like a temporary patch-up job. But we can heal it, but it does take courage and honesty. And the courage and honesty is, it's not about the trigger, it's about me. And even that, even saying that to yourself, it's not about the trigger, it's about me. And however uncomfortable that feels, at least you're on the right track. And I firmly believe that, and also one other big thing that helps us is to accept, the quicker we can accept that situation or that person for who they are, then that allows us to do this other work. While we're in resistance, we'll just be in projection or suppression. So acceptance is a big thing in the spiritual journey, to accept others as they are. Not easy because they're going to trigger stuff in you, but big thing. But I really totally believe that we can heal whatever's there through this beautiful relationship that we can foster with ourselves, this truth about ourselves, and in that connection with the Supreme Source. So this is the model. And so I hope that's been helpful for you. And I see that time is racing. Wow. I just want to show you this last image, because when you're releasing it, it really does feel a little bit like this, that a feeling will come up. So what we're doing here is, you can't not feel, and it's good that you feel it, but you can also be the observer of it. And this is the beauty, that as we gain that more spiritual experiences, we know that it's happening, we know the feeling's coming up, but there's part of us that's watching it. And we might see it move from the stomach to around the heart chakra, up into the throat. We can, almost feel like we're going to cry because our throat gets like really solid. It can be like creating migraines or something that feels like that. But then eventually, if you can hold it long enough without projecting it or suppressing it, it will release. And from my experience, it doesn't take that long. It's might take half an hour, it might take more, but if you can hold the feeling, say, this is not about the other person, eventually it will subside, and then you'll get some kind of insight about a belief system that you're holding that is, that's created your wound. So it's really about witnessing it, allowing it, and then releasing it. It will release on its own. And you'll feel so much better when that layer's gone. So this is something. And so that's the kind of end of the talk. And I'm really sorry that I haven't left too much time for questions, but I'm very willing to just stay on a bit later if up to Manish, really.
Yeah, that's fine. That's no problem. We do have a few questions posted, so I'll just move on to the questions. So the first one is, if you do so much for your close ones and they don't appreciate what you've done for them, it really hurts. How do you cope with that?
Not to expect it. There's this thing called 100-0 principle. And it is a brilliant principle, and you can start working with it and from today. And that is that 100% is you continue doing what you're doing, you give them respect, you enjoy what you're doing for them. But the 0 is you don't have any expectation. 0. And what you'll find is, if you really work with this over time, there'll be a shift in the relationship, because as soon as you shift your position in the relationship, ultimately you've changed the dynamic. So it really is about you not wanting anything from them. And the more you don't want anything from them, it actually will allow a shift in them, whatever that's going to be. And the relationship I was talking about of 30 years ago, I don't have any expectations. If they phone me, they don't phone me, so what? But when we do connect, because I don't have expectation, there's magic. Now, if you have to live with these people, you may have to kind of put some rules down for living, but if you can just work on, even for the next week, just accept them as they are. Don't have any expectation that they're going to give you feedback or say thank you or anything, but just get to the point where you are enjoying what you're doing. You are bringing that inner self into what you're doing. So you're bringing peace into what you're doing. You're bringing love into what you're doing. You're bringing joy into what you're doing. And that's what's going to create the magic, not when they change.
Thank you.
Essence.
No, that's great. Thank you. So another question posted was, can you be more specific about how you healed the wound?
Yeah, it's ongoing, I think. I think it's about being able to sit with it, sit with the feelings without projecting, without suppressing. So, 10 years ago, there was like massive feelings coming out, guilt, shame, all sorts of stuff. And some really heavy stuff. But there was always part of me that was watching it. And I sat with it. I didn't phone anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't eat. I didn't drink, nothing. I just sat with it until the feeling subsided. And I was fortunate at that time that there was no one looking at what I was doing. I just kind of went and found a little space, and, the layer of feeling would come and I would just do it. And, I'm living with 6 people. I can get triggered at any moment, really. So, but, if I can just hold the feeling, it's not about them, and then I always notice it goes down, it will release itself. It sort of releases. So this is how you heal the wound. And in that, as I said, in that meditation, you're almost taking it into that relationship that you can nurture with that your higher self and that higher being, and just be honest. I've got this feeling, and I want to release it. It's not about, I taught myself that it's not about them, it's about me. and then, I don't always get it right. I'm not pretending that I'm Miss Perfect or anything like that. Sometimes I project, and sometimes I suppress, and sometimes I say, I want to make, I need an escape, so I don't always get it right, but I have over the years done kind of a lot of healing this through the meditation practice. So,
thank you. So another question posted is, being in a painful situation, it's hard to forgive. How do you go about it?
Sometimes it's retrospective, and some of the both of these relationships I told you about, the one that 30 years and 20 years ago, they were highly painful at the time. I'm talking highly painful. The first one, traumatic. And I think you journey with it, but now I don't blame anyone. I don't blame anyone for that. I see it now. See, now, because I can teach this, I see that it was part of my journey. It's almost like it needed me to really understand it so that I could go through it. So I think when we can go through it, then ultimately we become helpers of humanity. So if it's not about, in a way, we can do forgiveness meditations, but my forgiveness meditations are not about forgiving them. It's forgiving myself for taking the pain. But I forgive myself because I didn't know at the time. I didn't have any method. I just consumed the pain. But I can see now that they were not responsible for my pain. They just triggered my pain. So it is a journey. But, the sooner that we let go of it, the better. We can express something else rather than the pain. Because you see, if you don't deal with your pain, then you'll be projecting it onto others. And there's someone around me at the current time who I can feel that they're making, I trigger their buttons. They trigger my buttons. But to get to that level of that, you realize that it's not about me and it's not about them. It's about a healing process that needs to happen.
Thank you. So another question posted is, how do you stop your brain telling you everything you have done wrong, as opposed to everything I did right?
Yes, that's a good question. I think it's just little by little. Maybe you might have to write, even if you start writing a list of all the good things that happened in your life and all the good things you did, and write about them. Because in a way, what we're doing is that this being part of ourself uses the brain. And, we have got into kind of neural pathways where we've got into a pattern now of thinking badly about myself. And so we've now got to create a new pathway. And that it's not going to happen overnight, is it? It's like you might need to think about, go deeply into it, all some of the good things that have happened in your life, where you were kind, or you helped a friend, or you did have a nice experience. And it's almost like you can revisit that and start, doing, and maybe even to start doing little acts of kindness now, where you don't want feedback or anything. You just maybe do it, you do something that no one knows that you did it, and start, and if you haven't learned to meditate, then I would highly recommend that, because it's really about going back and empowering, this soul empowerment helps us start to change the patterns. As we spend time with ourselves, that in itself is changing a pattern. So it's big work, but I had very low self-esteem when I came to the Brahma Kumaris. I didn't realize, now looking back, I can see. I didn't realize I was very functional. I could function, but now I understand that I did, and so I've been on the journey, still on the journey, 30 years, nearly 28 years. But I can feel there's shifts and changes all the time. And then you hit you go for a while, you're doing well, and another layer will come. So but it's really worth making that effort to see the good in yourself, because otherwise it starts a whole nother pattern, and it's a downward spiral. I'm no good. In a way, ego, I haven't really talked about ego, but ego is the projection. Ego is also the suppression. And ego can either go into arrogance, I'm better than, it's another coping mechanism to cover up the wounds, or ego can go into, I'm not good enough. And if you don't do something to stop that, it can almost go into, take you so down that I'm not even worth existing. And that's when people commit suicide, because they don't feel that they're worthy of existing. And that's the ego that's just taking you there. So it's almost like starting to build up self-respect based on, that there's this being that is beautiful, So that I wish you luck, because it is deep work to change these patterns, but it's so worth doing it. But if you haven't learned to meditate, then I would highly recommend that.
Thank you. And if we just have one final question, and then maybe you could lead us into a meditation. So the question is, how to get a balance with doing things for family and being taken for granted, needing time out?
Kind of similar to the first question, isn't it, in a way? So I think it's just voicing to yourself first. First step is voicing to yourself that you do need some time out. And then I think it's once you establish what your needs are. So you might work out, I really need to go for a walk. I really need, every day I need to have time to go for walks. So I've got time to be with myself, or I need time that I'm going to meditate, or this is what I need. I need to have time to have a relaxing bath. Whatever your thing is, you need to work out for yourself what is going to help you. I need time to write. I need time to explore, you know, whatever it is. And then I think you have to communicate it. So, you know, I'm noticing that I really feel like I need a bit more time to myself. And I think this would help me to take a half an hour walk or 20-minute walk. You know, I need an hour on Sunday, and then communicate what your need is, and then see how the family helps you. And they may never know. They may not know that you have what you need. They won't know. So, but first you have to work it out for yourself. What would help, and then communicate it. So, like in the environment that I live in, and it's a kind of community environment, not family, but, you know, I walk Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 40 minutes in the morning, and everyone knows that. Unless it's really, really, really pouring with rain, which, you know, the kind of rain where you're going to get soaked in a second, I'm going to be there. And that is so good for me. You know, during that walk, I might listen to something, I might just walk and get that sense of my own beingness, or, you know, just watch my thinking process, or feel that relationship with the Supreme Being. But Monday, Wednesday, you know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sorry, it's not. It's I've got the wrong days. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. That's my days. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I drive. So it's kind of like balancing things. So unless you communicate it, people will never know. They won't know. So I hope that's helpful. So that's the final question. So I thought, let's do a little meditation, going back into our essence, our like essential existence. So sit comfortably and bring yourself into the moment. And the easiest way to do this is just to watch your breath for a few moments, because the breath is always present. One of the easy ways to get a sense of the self is on an inner level, at the level of your eyes, kind of inside your skull, to imagine a circle of light. So it's kind of this level and it's going inside. And all of life is outside. Even your body is outside that light, that circle of light. And if you take yourself to the center point of that circle, and that is you, that center point. It's like the point of your existence. You can see it as a point of light, like a little sparkly star. But it's the energy that you bring to the body, to life. This is you. And from this point comes your thinking process and your feelings and your emotions. It all come from this point. But the emotions usually come when you're focused outside that circle. That's what, focused on life, that brings the emotions. But if you come back to that center point, just be with yourself in that center point. There's a very natural peace that's there. I don't know if you can tune into that. It's just when all the thoughts kind of calm down and there's space between your thoughts. And in that space, there's peace. It's very natural peace. And when we can almost be in that peace, kind of like sit in it, if you like, in this peace, that also puts us in the right position to receive from the Supreme Being that is full of peace, who has like rays of peace that can reach us, because it's beyond sort of space and time when we move into this still point. It's not physical, it's like a non-physical space. We can be in that ray of peace. So our own peace gets empowered. Our natural self becomes empowered. Our very existence gets empowered. And when we start to become peaceful, we can start to really appreciate that peace and love that peace. Start to appreciate ourselves, respect ourselves as that peaceful being. And this becomes the basis of our self-respect. So true self-respect is based on that inner self, that inner being, and that as we receive from the Supreme Being, that increases our self-respect. So this becomes the journey of empowerment. First connecting with the self, and then receiving these beautiful qualities from the Supreme Being. And then when we come back into life, we're coming from a place of our own truth, our own pure existence. And then life becomes about how do we express that, the creativity of expressing that pure existence through our work, through our roles, different roles we play. The purpose is to express your true self through all the things you do in life. So peace is our true nature. And when we start to experience our own peace, we start to feel alive again. Peace is our power. Peace is our truth. Om Shanti. It's a beautiful phrase we use. Om, I am. Shanti, peace. Om.